Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The wig box hit my wrist and slid. Try it on now, her tone left no space. I pushed the box back and gripped the table. Air felt hot against skin that hated touch. Something in me braced for impact. I'm Lena, 27, I keep a cap nearby. Mara leaned in, breath clipped and quick. Matching hair for the photos or you're out. My mouth went dry and I kept it closed. She waited like a judge who liked silence. I opened the box with 2 fingers. Lace brushed my palm and snagged a knuckle. Her eyes tracked every twitch like evidence. You knew this was the plan since March. The plan just shifted under my shoes. Put it on, her nails tapped a tight rhythm. I stared at the net and counted heartbeats. The room shrank to a buzzing square. I lifted the cap edge 1 inch up. She smiled too early and missed the flinch. Price tag's yours, she folded her arms hard. I'm already paying for makeup and travel. Who decided that for me? My voice landed flat. Her shrug looked rehearsed and expensive. My chest tightened as the group chat pinged. Phones lit across the table like tiny sirens. Everyone confirmed lengths, she tilted the screen. Blonde waves scrolled past, 12 clones grinning. I closed the lid with a quiet thud. Her smile thinned like a wire pulled sharp. Rehearsals tonight, she slid a garment bag over. Wear this, wear the hair, keep the symmetry. I hooked the zipper and stopped halfway. Hair is not a uniform, heat rose anyway. She glanced at my hairline and didn't blink. You promised to show up perfect, her jaw set. I promised to show up, I answered slower. Her fiancé glanced from the doorway and froze. He stepped back like he had stepped in paint. We both noticed the retreat and filed it. She softened her voice and tried a smile. It will look amazing, you will thank me. A beat stretched and I heard a hum. My hand found the cap brim and paused. I felt every stare even with eyes down. Try it here, she perched on the table edge. Just 5 seconds, then decide later. I lifted the wig once and weighed gravity. The net glinted like a dare I would lose. I set it back and cleared my throat. Refundable, she flicked the receipt once. I read the tiny print and let it burn. Rush fee, restock fee, shipping fee. She smiled wider at each cruel syllable. My pulse counted the money I did not have. Why this matters to you so much? Because I want one clean frame forever. She said forever like it owed her interest. My scalp prickled as the cap warmed. Something in me prepared a different frame. Step down if you cannot comply. The word comply scraped across my teeth. I pictured the aisle and an empty chair. I pictured my head uncovered and deliberate. Only one picture made my lungs work. Her phone pinged again and again. She held it up like a vote tally. Thumbs up piled beside my name and hair. I watched the pile grow and darken. I did not raise my hand to join. Last chance, she pushed the box closer. I picked it up and weighed the box. Then I set it on her lap gently. Her mouth opened and closed without sound. The room waited to see who moved first. I'll be at rehearsal on time. She breathed out, relieved too early again. Without the wig, I added and stood. Her relief cracked like glass under heel. We both understood the night just changed. Her payment request hit my screen before I reached the door. Deposit for the hairpiece and rush styling due now. I declined it and felt my thumb shake once. Another request arrived with a note that read urgent. I knew this would not stop here. A call flashed before the next request could land. Confirm your fitting today, a cheerful voice pushed through static. I never booked a fitting, I answered and stared at nothing. Your friend placed it under your name and card, the voice pressed. My jaw locked while I asked for the total. The number punched through my gut and stayed. I asked about cancellation and heard a bright script. Non-transferable and no credits, policy across all locations. I ended the call and turned off mobile data. Silence held for 3 seconds, then the knocks started. Open up, her fist set a tempo against the wood. You're making this harder than it needs. I kept the latch and counted under my breath. Leave the unit by the mat, I'll return it. We don't want it returned, she shot back fast. I cracked the door the width of 2 fingers. She stood close enough to count tiny breaths. Put it on for rehearsal and keep the peace. Peace for who? I asked and lifted my chin. She blinked first and that told me plenty. Her fiancé hovered behind with careful distance. He carried garment bags like they weighed his future. She's stressed and wants everything aligned, he offered softly. I watched him avoid my eyes like a mirror. He shifted the load and waited for permission. Try it once before we go, she insisted and stepped forward. IPL. Anted my feet and kept the crack narrow. 5 seconds and we end this, she pushed with a smile. 5 seconds is a lifetime on camera, I answered. Her smile twitched and a muscle in her cheek jumped. The corridor light flickered and she glanced up. People will talk if you stand out, she warned. People talk anyway, I said and unlatched the chain. I opened the door wide enough to own the moment. Her eyes moved to my hairline like a laser. She reached toward the brim and I caught her wrist. Do not touch me, I said, steady and plain. She froze and pulled back with a scoff. Fine, then pay for someone to fix it. I let the silence make the next move. Pick coverage or pick consequences, she murmured and stepped aside. You decide by call time, her hand cut the air. He glanced between us and swallowed hard. I watched the hallway stretch like a dare. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt once. Inside, I placed the box on the floor. I stared until the timer on the stove beeped. I wasn't cooking, so I killed the sound. I picked up clippers and felt their weight. A thought arrived that scared me and thrilled me. I plugged them in and listened to the buzz. I lifted them toward the thinnest strip and paused. A small voice in my chest asked for proof. I took a photo under harsh bathroom light. The image told a story I could not outrun. I moved the clippers an inch, then stopped again. Not out of fear, out of strategy and control. If I altered anything, she would call it sabotage. If I did nothing, she would call it selfish. Either way, my head would be hers to judge. I placed the clippers down and reached for makeup. Not to hide, to define the lines I wanted. I traced a clean edge along the front. Sharp, intentional, unmistakable on every angle. I wanted evidence of choice when eyes searched. A knock returned, softer this time and careful. Car is downstairs, came through like a truce. I grabbed a plain band and tightened it once. The shape looked deliberate in the mirror. I opened the door with my answer visible. She scanned my face first and then the outline. It reads aggressive, she whispered and adjusted her bracelet. It reads mine, I replied and brushed the edge. Her fiancé exhaled and the bag slipped an inch. We started down the stairs without another word. Halfway down, my phone found a bar again. Notifications flooded like hail against sheet metal. Photographer contract screenshots, penalties for noncompliance listed clearly. I clicked the link and read the clause twice. The choice hardened the way bone hardens after a break. Still time to fix this, and came from 2 steps up. Still time to accept me, I answered without turning. He slowed behind us and let space open. She kept pace like she could outrun the clock. I felt the night stretching its arms around us. The coordinator blocked the aisle with a clipboard raised like a shield. Hair standards are in the contract, a line before we start. I stepped past the line on the floor and held my ground. Mara watched from the front row with clenched fingers. I lifted my chin and let the room judge. The photographer circled me once and checked his tablet. Uniform silhouette required for group symmetry, he announced without blinking. Adjust your look or stand on the end. End works, I answered and let the word land. Mara's mouth tightened as if the word cut. Bridesmaids clustered near the front and whispered tightly. One reached for a sealed bag with practiced ease. Just wear the piece for the walk, remove after. I touched the clean edge I drew at home. Her hand hovered and then retreated. Mara rose and strode down the aisle fast. She stopped an arm's length away and smiled thinly. Compromise now and we are done fighting. I already compromised by showing up, I said slowly. A muscle jumped in her cheek and held. Her fiancé came from the side with careful steps. We can seat you with family and avoid the photos. His eyes met mine and then dropped quickly. I belong with the wedding party, I answered flat. He nodded once and stepped aside. The coordinator clapped once and pointed at the doors. Run-through begins now, places according to the chart. I took the far position beside a tall girl. She glanced at me and gave a tiny nod. My shoulders loosened as the music started. We walked the length and stopped on our marks. Photographer lifted his camera and sighed through his nose. Numbers 3 and 8 adjust posture and line height. I fixed my stance and squared my jaw. Mara stared hard enough to scrape paint. During the vows practice, my phone vibrated steadily. A new group thread appeared with my handle tagged. Confirm compliance tonight, read the pinned message above fines. I typed one sentence and locked the screen. No more negotiation through a crowd of strangers. Break time arrived and the bridal party swarmed snacks. I headed for water and found my Baz blogged. Mara's mother stood there with a calm face. In our family we strive for one look, she murmured. I am not in your family, I answered gently. She measured me for a long, quiet second. You risk embarrassing someone who always defended you. I felt the old reflex to apologize surge. I swallowed it and kept my hands still. Defend me now by letting this be. The coordinator called us back to formation quickly. Second pass and then rehearsal dinner across the street. We lined up again and I breathed evenly. Mara leaned close as we waited to move. Last opportunity to cooperate before real consequences. I stared straight ahead and let the threat hang. Feet stepped, dresses swayed, tension rode with us forward. At the altar, the photographer cleared his throat once. Bridesmaid at 8, your scalp gleams under these fixtures. Several heads turned and held too long. Document me as I am, I answered without flinching. It will distract in the album, he replied briskly. It will distract if you keep pointing, I said. Mara exhaled sharply and waved him off. He lowered the camera and adjusted his settings. After the final bow, the coordinator dismissed the group. I moved toward the exit and felt Mara follow. We handle this now before dinner, she pressed behind me. I will not purchase or wear a false cover. Her eyes flashed with something that looked like panic. She pulled me into a side room and shut it. Her fiancé hovered at the threshold with uncertain hands. Mara laid the hairpiece on a chair deliberately. Put it on for one photograph and I forgive everything. I looked at the chair and then at her. You want forgiveness for my body choosing itself, I asked. You want forgiveness for sabotaging my plans, she shot back. The word sabotaging hung like a stone over both of us. I felt anger rise and then cool into focus. Your plan does not control my head. Footsteps approached and the coordinator peeked inside quickly. Dinner is starting and the family is waiting. Mara straightened her dress and gathered herself fast. She pressed the hairpiece into my hands like evidence. I placed it back on the chair and left. In the hall, her fiancé caught up with me. She is spiraling and everything feels fragile tonight. His voice trembled and his shoulders sagged slightly. You are allowed to set a boundary, I said. He nodded and looked suddenly much younger. We crossed the street to the restaurant together. A long table waited with place cards and menus. My name sat beside Mara's on the front end. I took the chair and kept my head uncovered. Conversations dimmed as eyes moved toward us. Toasts began and glasses rose in shaky rhythm. An aunt praised unity and long marriages and patience. Her gaze slid to me on the word patience. Mara tapped a spoon and stood with trembling smile. I have one request for my favorite person. A hush rolled across the table like a tide. She held her glass aloft and faced me fully. For tomorrow, please match the bridal party standard. I set my hands flat and felt heat rise. Across the table, the photographer lifted his brow. I leaned toward the mic and kept my tone even. I will dress in the assigned color and length. I will not conceal my scalp for anyone. Forks paused midair and then clinked down hard. Mara's smile vanished like a screen going dark. Her father shifted and cleared his throat once. We respect personal choices but ask for grace. He looked at his daughter and then at me. Grace is not a receipt for obedience. I kept my posture calm and unmovable. Dinner resumed in jittery bursts and forced jokes. I picked a bread and stared at the exit. My phone buzzed with a new direct message. The stylist from earlier offered an after-hours slot. I typed no and locked the screen again. On the sidewalk after, Mara caught my arm firmly. She leaned close enough that I felt her breath. If you ruin this, I will never forgive you. I looked past her at the hotel lights. I said nothing because silence was my answer. Back in the room, I laid out my outfit. I checked seams and pins and nothing else. The head shape in the mirror looked intentional tonight. I touched the sharp line I drew and steadied. Tomorrow would ask for the version that never hid. The knock came before my alarm buzzed. Styling team here for final fixes, a chirp through the door. No fixes scheduled, I answered and kept the chain on. A cart rolled against the threshold and jammed it. I slid the chain free and planted my foot hard. Two artists wheeled in with practice speed. Bride requested emergency coverage session, quick touch-ups only. I blocked the chair and crossed my arms. One face yes, no head additions. Brushes paused in midair like trapped birds. They exchanged a look and opened a garment bag. A sleek cover shimmered as they lifted it carefully. Her instructions mentioned uniform frame for every attendant. I tilted the mirror toward them and held my stance. We work on skin tone only, nothing else. They hesitated and then unpacked the kit anyway. One blinked at my hairline and nodded once. Line looks intentional, I can shape the edges. Keep the outline and add nothing, I repeated slowly. She smiled like someone who understood heat. My phone rattled on the counter and skittered. A new message banner flashed in bold letters. Failure to adhere voids travel costs, the planner wrote. I snapped a photo of the text for later. They pretended not to read over my shoulder. Halfway through concealer, the door opened without a knock. Mara swept in with a white hanger over one arm. She scanned my reflection and stopped breathing for a beat. Put the topper on now, we are late. The brushes stilled again as tension filled the space. I stood and the stool scraped the tile. Faces done, head stays as shown. She tossed the hanger onto the bed with force. You are making me beg in my own timeline. Her jaw worked like she was chewing glass. Her fiancé lingered in the doorway with wide eyes. Guests start arriving in 20 minutes, he murmured. He looked between us like watching a fuse burn. Mara thrust a receipt toward me with shaky fingers. Pay this and I dropped the requirement. I read the figure and let it hang. Not paying for something you ordered without consent. The artist stepped back and folded their arms. One cleared her throat and traced the edge again. This looks clean, forcing extra will lift makeup. Mara glared at the artist until she flushed. Out, she pointed at the door like a gavel. They packed fast and rolled the cart away. The room shrank to 3 bodies and a choice. My pulse set a drum I did not mute. She moved closer until our foreheads could meet. Stand in the back row and I forgive everything. Forgive me for existing, I asked low. Her nostrils flared and she looked past me. Do not twist this, give me symmetry. He stepped forward with his palms raised halfway. Could we breathe and revisit portraits, he offered. I watched his shoulders slump after the words left. He sounded tired of refereeing a game he never chose. Mara ignored him and reached for my brim. I caught her wrist and let silence load. Touch me again and I walk, I said. She yanked free and stumbled one step back. For a second I saw fear flicker across control. Then the mask clicked into place again. A chime from my phone cut through the air. A bridesmaid sent a selfie from the shuttle. Where are yous? They want lineup by the hall. I typed 2 words and a period. Coming now, I slid past Mara and moved. The corridor hummed with voices and distant music. I entered the prep area and heads tilted. The planner's eyes narrowed when she saw my outline. She lifted a clipboard like a sword and pointed. You stand far left near the pillar. I walked to the assigned spot and squared up. Girls adjusted straps and checked their lashes. A cousin glanced at me and squeezed my elbow. You look strong today, she whispered with quick warmth. Strength bloomed where shame used to live. Mara arrived to a hush that spread fast. She stood at center and inhaled through her nose. One instruction before we walk, she announced tightly. No personal statements during the ceremony, no gestures. Her stare found my head and held. I kept my gaze on the double doors. An usher waved and signaled the first pair. The line began to inch toward the aisle. I felt every eye crawl at my scalp. Fear tried to climb, it slipped and fell. The music swelled from behind the doors. The planner counted with her fingers and mouthed. I took my partner's arm and stepped forward. Mara's nails scraped her palm as we passed. I did not look back to see the rage. At the threshold, the usher blocked me slightly. Swap places with the last pair, quick switch. My partner glanced up at me and frowned. This is not on the chart, she whispered. I held position and shook my head once. The usher hesitated and then dropped his hand. I entered the aisle and felt the room tilt. Heads turned slowly like sunflowers chasing heat. Some smiled and some blinked and some stiffened hard. I kept the cadence steady and my chin fixed. Halfway down I heard Mara hiss a warning. "Do not ruin this day," floated like a dart. My steps did not falter as fire flickered inside. The officiant waited with an open book and calm face. He studied me for a second and nodded once. We reached our marks and faced the crowd. I locked my knees and breathed through my nose. On cue, the photographer crouched and framed the line. His lens hovered on me an extra beat. He took the shot anyway and kept shooting. Mara joined us and handed off her bouquet. She glanced at me and adjusted her veil sharply. The vows began and her voice wavered then steadied. I felt something loosen in my chest slowly. Not victory, not yet, something heavier shifting. During the exchange, the planner whispered near my ear. "After the kiss, you exit first to avoid group images." I turned slightly and met her stare. "That is not the order you handed out." She blushed and looked down at her list. The ring slid on and applause swelled quick. Confetti cannons cracked from the balcony and echoed. Mara laughed out loud for the first time. She turned toward the crowd and then toward me. Our eyes locked and the joy vanished. We recessed down the aisle with cameras blazing. I kept pace and matched the rhythm without wavering. Outside the doors, the planner grabbed my arm hard. "Portraits next, and we need your cooperation." I unhooked her fingers one by one slowly. "Send me the order and I will stand where assigned." She typed with frantic thumbs and sent the grid. I scanned it and found my number moved again. Pushed off the center block and shuffled behind pillars. Someone was rewriting rules in real time. I lifted my head so every change recorded. Mara watched me register the new positions. Her mouth curved into something like triumph. I returned a steady look and smiled once. Two can play strategy without raising voices. Flash burst across our faces and the shutter rattled. "Group 1, eyes forward," the photographer barked without looking up. I held the line while whispers slid along the row. Mara angled her body and blocked me with a shoulder. I stepped sideways until he had me in frame again. "Bridal party tight center, extras to the wings." He pointed left and right like moving furniture. My number on the grid said middle block. The planner lifted a hand and motioned me outward. I stayed put until the camera clicked twice. Mara's bracelet scraped her wrist as she pivoted. "Trade spots and we keep moving," she muttered through teeth. I didn't move and her stare sharpened. The photographer shifted lenses and D-side. "We lose light if we keep arguing." "Solo portraits 2 minutes each," he announced with authority. Mara walked straight into the frame and posed. Tension loosened around us as people clapped softly. When my turn came, he hesitated at the viewfinder. "Want a cover or shoot it clean?" "Shoot it clean," I squared up and set my jaw. Click, another angle, one more without direction. He lowered the camera and studied the preview. "This reads decisive," he murmured under his breath. Behind him, I heard Mara's heel scrape. Her mother drifted over with a practiced smile. "Take one with the topper for safety," she suggested. I looked at the bags hanging from her hand. "Not part of my look," I answered and held still. The smile cracked and she stepped back a pace. The planner reappeared holding her tablet like a badge. "Family blocks next, please queue by last names." Mara cut in and pulled the planner aside. A quick whisper, a quick nod, a new order. My slot vanished from the list in real time. I raised a hand and the photographer paused. Your chart omitted me from this arrangement. The planner avoided my eyes and cleared her throat. Limited slots on the backdrop, we prioritize immediate relatives. Mara watched the exchange with something close to satisfaction. Before I could answer, the groom reached us. Include her or I walk back inside, his voice steady. He positioned me beside him and folded his arms. Mara blinked like she missed a step on stairs. The photographer lifted the camera with fresh interest. We stacked into position and held our faces still. One serious, one relaxed, the photographer called out. On relaxed, the groom's hand brushed my elbow briefly. A quiet signal that I was not alone here. Mara noticed and her mouth thinned. Music from the reception room swelled and pulled people inside. The coordinator urged movement with short, clipped gestures. I followed the stream until a bridesmaid intercepted me. She's furious, watch the cake speech, she whispered fast. My shoulders tightened because I believed it. At our table, a folded place card waited. On the back, someone scrawled where the piece now. I slid it under my plate without reacting. A server poured water and tried not to stare. Even kindness felt like weight on my chest. Toast started with safe jokes and predictable praise. Then Mara took the mic and squared herself. She turned to me and lifted her glass high. Some friends support the vision, some resist, she began. Chairs creaked while people leaned in. She launched into gratitude that circled like a hawk. Then she snapped to the point with perfect diction. Out of respect for memories, a unified image matters. Eyes slid toward me like magnets finding north. I steadied my breath and watched her dare me. I rose when she finished and took the microphone. I honored the dress code and the schedule, I said. I will not alter my head for any album. Gasps came from three corners and then silence. Mara's nostrils flared and the planner flinched. The groom stood quickly and clinked his fork. To love that survives difference, he announced with force. Applause broke the standoff before it hardened. Mara smiled on cue and kissed his cheek. Her eyes never left mine over his shoulder. Dinner resumed, but the table hummed at a higher pitch. Phones appeared and disappeared like restless fish. A notification banner slid across my screen. A new thread, bridesmaid refuses basic courtesy. My photo attached cropped tight at the top. I opened the thread and read fast. Some strangers cheered, some demanded removal from pictures. A bridesmaid's username liked the post with a heart. I looked up and met her eyes across candles. She looked down and pretended to adjust a napkin. I walked to the hallway and called the photographer. Forward my individual shots tonight, I asked calmly. I want time-stamped copies preserved as delivered. He exhaled once and agreed with a short nod. Insurance felt necessary because stories morph. When I returned, the bouquet toss was forming. The planner chased me with quick steps. After desserts, we need you for retakes. What changed? I kept my voice even and low. Family wants a modesty option for some frames. Define modesty, I folded my arms and waited. She looked at the floor and then to the doors. A thin overlay, it softens reflection on the head. I smiled without warmth and shook my head once. It softens me into someone I am not. She swallowed and scribbled on her clipboard in haste. Then expect to be positioned off the main line. That is your right, I said and stepped around her. I took a glass of water and faced the room. Across the dance floor, Mara watched me like a hawk. Her father approached with careful hands open. Let us avoid more conflict tonight, he pleaded. He gestured toward the photographer waiting by the backdrop. One covered shot, then piece for TH. Family. I met his eyes and felt the old urge to yield. I will take a solo instead, nothing added. His shoulders slumped with something that looked like relief. He nodded and walked back toward the stage. Mara stared at him as if betrayed by gravity. The next song crashed in and the moment fractured. For the solo, I stood center and faced forward. The photographer's finger hovered, then he lowered the camera. Chin higher and eyes at me, he instructed. I lifted and felt my spine stack like bricks. He clicked 3 times and smiled with approval. When I stepped off the mark, Mara blocked me. She held out the hairpiece like a traffic stop. Wear it for one frame and we heal this. I looked at the thing and then at her. My answer gathered like a storm in my mouth. No, just that, nothing extra to soften it. She stared as if the word could be revoked. Her lips trembled, then she called to the photographer. Delete any image where her scalp is visible. He froze and glanced at the groom. The groom folded his arms and spoke slowly. Do not erase our day to control her. Conversations paused across the room and tilted our way. Mara blinked fast and looked toward the planner. The planner studied the floor like it had answers. I stepped back, letting the couple absorb their fight. This was not only about me anymore. The photographer lowered his camera to his side. Files stay intact unless the couple both insist. He waited, and so did the room. Mara's breath quickened and her shoulders lifted. She scanned every face and found little agreement. For a split second, I saw a different fear. Not about pictures, about being seen as cruel. She swallowed and said nothing at all. The band launched into the first loud chorus. Guests surged to the floor and the pressure scattered. The groom reached my side and spoke quietly. Thank you for standing without shouting. His hand brushed the air, then dropped. I nodded once and walked toward the doors. Not to flee, to breathe and reset my spine. In the vestibule, my phone buzzed again. An email from the stylist offered a late appointment. I stared at the screen until the offer expired. I returned to the party with a steady step. Cameras flashed and laughter rose in waves. Mara danced hard with her eyes on me. She spun, forced a grin, then looked away. Tomorrow would demand an answer none of us liked. The invoice hit my inbox before breakfast. Damages for noncompliance, the subject line screamed like a siren. They charged for extra edits and reshoots I never approved. I stared until the numbers stopped blurring. Then I opened a new message and asked for itemization. A reply landed fast with a legal tone. Pay within 72 hours or we escalate. I screenshotted the threat and archived the chain. Then I called the photographer and kept my voice level. Confirm delivery of the originals untouched and keep backups. He forwarded a download link and a short note. Gallery posted, nothing altered without joint consent. Relief swept in and steadied my hands. I saved everything to 2 drives in the cloud. Insurance, not vengeance, because memories get rewritten. My screen lit again with a fresh tag. Her caption under a carousel, some people made this harder. Comments bloomed like weeds and mentioned me directly. A cousin typed that I ruined symmetry for everyone. I closed the app and let quiet settle. The groom texted from an unknown number. Want you to have a copy of our contract. He attached the clause that protected contributor images. Thank you, I wrote and left it tight. Gratitude does not need long speeches to land. An email from the coordinator arrived with bullet points. She requested my address for shipping the hairpiece back. Refusal to wear equals forfeiture of seat reimbursement. I replied with 4 words and a period. Return to sender, not mine. Door knocks resumed like rehearsals never ended. A bridesmaid stood there with a hard smile. Sign this note acknowledging you caused expense. She held out a pen and waited for obedience. I stepped into the doorway and blocked her view. Not signing false statements, I said without breathing fast. She blinked and shifted the paper behind her back. I'm just delivering, don't shoot the messenger. Then carry a message back, I answered. No more doorstep stunts, use email. My scalp itched along the drawn edge. Stress made the skin tight and angry today. I washed my face and let water cool it. In the mirror I saw a head that chose. Not defiant, resolved, which mattered more. My mother called while I dried my hands. I saw the photos, you look brave. Brave sounded better than difficult for once. I am tired of apologizing for existing, I said. She exhaled like she had waited years to hear it. A new text arrived from Mara, short and pointed. Pay half the photographer overage or I post everything. My thumbs hovered and then found the answer. Post what you want, I will post mine. 3 dots pulsed, then vanished, then nothing. I opened my calendar and moved money around. Monday had a slot at a clinic across town. Scalp shading session, multiple passes over several weeks. I booked the first visit and paid the deposit. Commitment calmed me more than any pep talk. On the bus, I scrolled through the gallery. One image stopped me cold and held me. I stood left of center with shoulders squared. Eyes clear, head clean, mouth set like a boundary. I saved it as my lock screen and smiled. At the clinic, the practitioner studied my hairline. We mapped density and built an honest shape. Honest was the only word that mattered. He dotted a guide and waited for my nod. The needle hummed and the decision sealed. During the first break, my phone buzzed again. A private message from the groom appeared quietly. "We are keeping every photo," she finally agreed. I read it twice and felt weight slide off. Not forgiveness, finality, which is different. Payment demands kept coming in smaller waves. Threats softened into requests, then softened into silence. I sent a single certified letter with receipts. Unauthorized orders will not be paid by me. Paper trails speak when people stop listening. Weeks later, the full set went live online. My picture sat between two rows of perfect curls. No blur, no patch, nothing hidden or blurred. Comments argued under the frame like a bonfire. I didn't answer because the photo answered. One last text from her appeared near midnight. "You embarrassed me, but you look strong." The dots returned, then a final line. I wanted control more than I wanted a friend. I stared at it and let the truth settle. I blocked her and slept for 8 hours. In the morning, the mirror met a different face. Same head, new stance, steadier breath, looser jaw. The line was crisp and I didn't reach for a cap. I walked out the door and didn't look back.